Now I'm going to talk about a movie I've wanted to talk about for a long time. This is my review on Werewolf, made in 1996. So many things to say. So, what is this movie about? It follows a group of archaeologists in Arizona discovering a skeleton of a werewolf. One of the archaeologists named Yuri thinks he could become famous with this discovery, and he soon finds out that the skeleton can still turn people into werewolves. When one of the archaeologists gets cut by the bones of the skeleton, he immediately becomes a werewolf. So Yuri begins to experiment on others by cutting other people on the skeleton and seeing if they turn into werewolves. So a writer named Paul shows up to analyze the werewolf skeleton. There's sort of a love story between him and a female archaeologist named Natalie, who has a fake Russian accent. And apparently Yuri has eyes for her as well and becomes envious, and decides to forcefully scratch Paul with the werewolf skull out of anger. So now the character Paul is a werewolf and begins going on a murderous rampage as a werewolf. Well, sometimes he turns into a werewolf. Other times he turns into a guy who needs to see a barber. And other times he turns into a black bear with the head of a vampire. That's pretty much the movie. So what is the movie like? Well, say if Ed Wood directed a werewolf movie, this movie would be the outcome. This movie probably has more goofs than Plan 9 from Outer Space did. Many people view this movie as being so bad it's good. And you know what? I agree to some extent. This movie is a joke. There are so many mistakes in this movie. At least Plan 9 from Outer Space felt finished. This movie doesn't feel finished. It doesn't even feel half finished. IMDb says it was made in the late 90s, and it looks like it was shot in the mid-80s. Most of the scenes in the movie don't even look like they are connected at all. It feels like they just shot a bunch of scenes throughout the course of a decade, and they just went with it and saw what happened in the end. That's what it feels like. A lot of the actors' hairstyles change throughout the movie. One of the actors goes through like 6 hairstyle changes. The actor who played as Yuri has black combed hair at the beginning, and a scene that is supposed to take place one day later, he has blonde spiky hair. And in the next scene, which is supposed to take place on the same day, he's back to having black combed hair. Then there's a scene where he's at a party and he has his hair slicked back and it's dark brown. Then moments later, in the exact same scene, he has his hair combed to the side and his hair is gray. It's like, when was this movie made? When was the film schedule? How? The movie is directed by Tony Zarandast, who has directed a lot of bad movies. He has earned the name the Persian Ed Wood. And he has a lot of elements that Ed Wood had, so it's the perfect name. He's even in the movie himself as a security guard who turns into a werewolf. And I have to talk about this scene. Before he turns into a werewolf, he gets into his car and starts driving. Yes, driving werewolves. But even something like that is ruined. When he gets into the car, his face is covered in makeup to make him look like a werewolf. But when he drives out of the parking lot, you can clearly see there's no makeup on his face. And soon after, he crashes the car. Throughout the scene, he's driving like a car that looks like it's from the 1950s. It's an old-fashioned car. And when the car crashes, the car magically changes into like a 1980s car. The director deserves an award. A lot of the actors have fake accents that they go in and out of throughout the movie. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie where one of the actors is wearing sunglasses, and without even paying attention, you can see the cameraman's reflection in the guy's glasses. There's another scene where this couple is making love in a Jeep, and the werewolf shows up, and rather than driving away, which would have been the smart thing to do, The girl just gets out of the Jeep and runs. It's stupid. The acting... I actually thought the acting was fine. Despite the fake accent bullshit, they did fine. Federico Cavalier was alright, I guess. He's pretty good as a speaking actor, but when he's a werewolf, he's a terrible actor. It's overacting at its finest. Adriana Miles did a decent job. George Rivero was horrible. You know, the movie actually does have a few bigger names in it. No one that famous, but a few people who have experience. Joe Estevez is in the movie, and he does a really good job. Unfortunately, he's not in the movie all that much. He's in the first half of the movie, but he disappears. Randall Oliver is also in the movie as an archaeologist. He's not in the movie all that much either. So, I'd say he's in it for the first 30 minutes, not even. But he did a pretty good job for what he did. Richard Lynch is probably the most well-known actor in the movie, and he was the best actor in it. My favorite character was Sam the Keeper, played by R.C. Bates. This gun-toting bearded man who goes around wearing a camo, smoking a cigar. I wish he was in more scenes in the movie. There's a scene where he says something like, "I heard Dracula was a faggot." And it just comes out of nowhere. He was a fun character, if only he was in the movie more. According to some sources on the internet, Alec Baldwin was considered for a lead role in this movie, but that never happened. Now, as for the special effects, well, they're not so special. The werewolf makeup effects were alright at times. In fact, they look really well. Other times, they look like shit. When you have the bear, wolf, bat creature costume, a lot of people make fun of it because it looks kind of funky. But I didn't mind it. It's like a low-budget version of the werewolf from Bad Moon. I thought it looked kind of cool. I wish it was used more throughout the film. You see it once at the beginning and twice at the end. The pictures I'm showing are probably the most you see of it. I mean, yeah, there is one shot in the movie where it falls down, but it's so dark you can barely see it. This is why I think the movie was shot at other times, because it doesn't share screen time with any of the actors, not even during the final confrontation between the werewolf and Yuri. It just waves its arms at the camera while we cut to a shot of Yuri bleeding. And when the werewolf is on camera, it looks like it was shot in the 90s. So I don't get it. When was this movie made and what was the filming schedule? But the werewolf looked cool. I wish they used it a little more in the movie. Another thing I loved was the music. It has like this tribal soundtrack. I'll probably post the theme song in another video because I like it that much. Probably should have been in a better werewolf movie, but whatever. And not to nitpick, but the title is a bit questionable. Werewolf. Yeah, just Werewolf. That's a name you can give to just about any werewolf movie ever made. It made it pretty difficult to find any information on the movie because the movie is just simply called Werewolf, and it came out around the same time as a few other werewolf movies that are a lot more popular. So I wish they had a more recognizable title. In fact, the movie has an alternate title, Arizona Werewolf. Why they didn't go with that, I'll never know. That would make it a little more recognizable. Hell, the movie came out a whole year after Howling 7. They might as well call it Howling 8. But from this point on, I will always call the movie Arizona Werewolf. However, despite all the problems, despite the amount of continuity errors, despite the terrible editing, I mean, this is the second worst edited film I've ever seen. There's a scene where the werewolf goes out and kills someone, then the next scene shows him transforming and going out. It's terrible editing. However, despite all those problems, I have to say, I liked this movie. I've probably seen it more than anyone else on the planet. The acting was alright, the music I loved, the effects were okay for what they were. The camera work, I love the camera work. My favorite part was when the camera immediately zoomed out when the one guy was turning into a werewolf. In a lot of ways, it's actually better than a lot of the werewolf movies coming out lately. I would say the movie has its place. I think the movie would have been better if it followed the archaeologists as main characters. I mean, when the movie begins with them discovering the werewolf skeleton and one of them becomes a werewolf, it was a straightforward werewolf movie until after that. That's the movie I would have made. So Werewolf, I give it a 6 out of 10. It's nowhere near as good as Dog Soldiers or An American Werewolf in London, but it's better than An American Werewolf in Paris and Howling 7. Every werewolf movie is better than Howling 7. So I would recommend getting it. However, I wouldn't recommend getting the DVD. It usually goes anywhere from 40 to 70 bucks, and the DVD is not that good of quality. I mean, the DVD looks like a bootleg. I guess it was released back when DVD was a new thing. Personally, I would recommend getting the VHS release with the holographic box cover of the guy turning into a werewolf. That was cool. Or if you want a DVD, you can watch the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version. It can be found on the 20th Anniversary Edition DVD, along with Laser Blast and a few others. So that's all. Oh, and one more thing. Because of all the mysteries about the movie's production, if anyone here on YouTube knows anything about this film, could they please tell me? See ya.